I wasn't supposed to like him. In fact, when my boss asked if his son could crash at my apartment for a few weeks, my first reaction wasn't curiosity or excitement, it was dread. I'd seen pictures of Jason before, the golden boy with a perfectly symmetrical face and a jawline sharp enough to shave ice. But photos don't capture personality, and according to the few murmurs around the office, Jason had plenty of that, most of it the obnoxious kind. "He's just figuring stuff out," my boss had said over lunch, halfway through a kale salad. "Took a break from school, needs a place to land. I'd appreciate it." I nodded. Because what else can you do when your boss asks for a favor that's disguised as a question? And that's how Jason ended up standing in the doorway of my tiny downtown apartment 2 Saturdays later, holding a beat-up duffel bag and flashing me a smile that should have come with a warning label. "Yo," he said, stepping inside like he owned the place. "You got any snacks?" That was my introduction. The first week was rough. Jason took long showers that used up all the hot water, played his music too loud, and left protein shake containers in the sink like they were gonna wash themselves. I tried to stay chill, deep breaths, headphones, and passive-aggressive cleaning sprees, but the guy was everywhere, shirtless in the kitchen, sprawled on the couch, asking me random invasive questions like, "Have you ever hooked up with a dude?" while I was brushing my teeth. The weird thing was, I didn't hate it, which only made everything more complicated. I told myself it was just because he was hot. That's it, just hormones. I mean, anyone with eyes would notice the way his tank tops clung to his chest, the way his boxers peeked out every time he reached for something on a high shelf. But it wasn't just that. He was funny, kind of goofy in a way that caught me off guard. And sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, he'd watch me with this strange, quiet intensity that made my skin prickle. Then came the Thursday night that changed everything. I had just finished a nightmare of a workday, the kind where every email feels like a personal attack. Jason was on the couch, gaming, feet propped up on my coffee table like it was his. I didn't even say anything, just dropped onto the other end of the couch with a groan. "Tough day?" he asked, not looking away from the screen. "Brutal," I muttered. He paused the game. Actually paused it, then turned toward me, one knee drawn up, his elbow resting on it. "Want to talk about it?" I stared at him. "Since when do you care?" Jason grinned. "Since now." I shook my head, but the smile tugged at the corner of my mouth anyway. We ended up talking for hours, nothing dramatic. Just work stuff, life stuff, little confessions that feel bigger when you say them out loud. At some point, I realized we were sitting closer than before, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of his body. His eyes kept flicking to my mouth. Mine kept dropping to his collarbone. It was subtle, but something had shifted. "Hey," he said finally, his voice low. "You ever think about what it would be like?" I swallowed. What would be like?" He didn't answer right away, just leaned back, stretching his arms behind his head. "If things were different," my throat went dry. "Different how?" Jason looked at me then, really looked. No smirk, no joke, just raw honesty. "If you kissed me right now, would that be weird?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My brain short-circuited, every rational thought drowned out by the sound of my heartbeat slamming in my ears. "I think about it," he said softly, "more than I should." I was still frozen when he stood up, ran a hand through his hair, and walked toward the hallway. "Good night," he said, not looking back. And just like that, he disappeared into the dark. I barely slept that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, running the conversation back in my head on a loop, like some kind of glitching playlist. "If you kissed me right now, would that be weird?" It was the kind of thing someone says half-jokingly, just to test the waters, to see if you'll laugh it off or jump in. But Jason hadn't laughed. He hadn't looked like he wanted to be funny. And I hadn't answered. I didn't even know why. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe part of me was scared that if I did say something, if I said yes, or worse, no, it would all come crashing down. The next morning, I dragged myself into the kitchen like a zombie. Jason was already there, wearing those stupidly tight joggers and a plain white tee that clung to him like second skin. He looked up from his cereal, eyes a little puffy, hair still messy from sleep. "Morning," he said. I nodded. "Morning." Nothing else. Not at first. He didn't bring up what happened the night before, and I didn't either. We just moved through the morning like we were pretending to be normal again. But the air between us had changed. It was thicker, charged. Every movement felt exaggerated. Every glance carried weight. Later that day, I worked from home. Jason mostly kept to himself, headphones on as he watched something on his laptop in the living room. At one point, I walked past him on my way to the bathroom, and he looked up, caught my eye, and held it for just a second too long. I almost stopped walking. That evening, it rained. One of those sudden summer storms that hit without warning and soak everything in minutes. We both ended up on the balcony, drawn outside by the sound of it. I leaned against the railing. Jason stood a few feet away, arms crossed. "I wasn't trying to make it weird last night," he said finally. I looked over at him. "You didn't." He gave a short laugh. "Come on. I basically confessed to thinking about kissing my roommate. That's textbook weird." I turned toward him fully, arms still resting on the rail. "Then why say it?" Jason shrugged, but his jaw clenched a little. "I don't know. I guess I was tired of wondering what it'd be like." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was tense, yeah, but in a way that felt alive. "You think about it a lot?" I asked. His eyes met mine. "More than I should." I stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne under the rain, faint and sharp. "So why haven't you done anything?" He gave a shaky laugh. "I didn't think you'd let me." I searched his face. "And if I do?" Jason didn't answer. He just leaned in, slow and uncertain, like he was giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. His lips brushed mine, soft and careful, like he was scared of breaking something. And then he kissed me, fully, firmly, and my hands found his waist without thinking. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some cinematic crescendo. It was quiet, intimate, intense, like two people finally exhaling. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that for days," he whispered. I smiled, heart pounding. "Yeah, me too." He pulled back, eyes scanning mine like he was trying to gauge what came next. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Are you?" He hesitated, then grinned. "I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But yeah, I'm good." We stood there for another minute, letting the rain mist over us. No more pretending, no more ignoring it. This was real now, and I had no idea what was coming next. But for the first time in a long time, I was actually excited to find out. We didn't talk about the kiss for the rest of the night. Not in a weird avoidance way, but more like we didn't need to. The silence between us had shifted into something calm and easy. It wasn't awkward. If anything, it felt like a relief, like we'd both been holding our breath without knowing it, and finally we were allowed to breathe. After the rain stopped, we ended up watching a movie together. Nothing romantic, just some dumb action flick. Jason claimed it was comfort viewing. I wasn't really watching though. My eyes kept flicking to him, his profile lit up by the screen, the way his fingers tapped absent-mindedly on his thigh, the slight curve of his lips when something dumb happened on screen. At one point, our hands brushed on the couch. Neither of us moved away. By the time the credits rolled, the apartment was quiet again, just the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional distant sound of traffic. Jason didn't get up right away. He just turned toward me, eyes a little softer than usual. "So," he started, his voice low. "So," I echoed, leaning back against the couch. "What happens now?" It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself in some form since last night. But hearing him ask it out loud made it feel more real. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, even though my heart had kicked up again. "We figure it out?" Jason smiled, That small, unsure smile I was starting to realize was rare for him. That's pretty vague, you know. Yeah, well, so is making out with your boss's son. He laughed at that, a real laugh, the kind that made my chest ache a little, in a good way. Does your boss know you're, He asked after a second. Gay? Yeah, I nodded. Yeah, it's not something I shout about, but I'm not hiding it either. Jason was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm not out. Not really. I looked over at him. You don't have to be. Not for me. He nodded slowly. It's not that I'm ashamed. It's just new. For me. And complicated. I reached over and touched his hand. It's okay. I get it. He squeezed my fingers lightly. Thanks. Another pause. Then he added, so if something happens between us, you're cool with it being kind of low-key? I thought about it. I wasn't the type who needed grand declarations or Instagram posts. What I wanted, what I'd always wanted, was real connection. And right now, I was looking at a guy who was trying. Who was honest, even if unsure. I'm cool with it, I said. As long as you are. Jason looked down, then up again, and smiled in a way that felt like a tiny victory. Yeah, I am. He didn't go to his room that night. We didn't do anything wild, not even close. We just lay in bed, side by side, not touching at first. Talking. About random things. About high school. About weird childhood habits. About fears and plans, and how sometimes life takes you places you didn't expect. Then, somewhere between a laugh and a yawn, his hand found mine under the blanket, and he scooted closer. Not to start something. Just to be near. That's how I fell asleep. With Jason's hand in mine, the weight of his body steady beside me, and the strange but undeniable feeling that something real had just begun. Waking up next to him was surreal. The morning light filtered through the blinds and pale yellow stripes, casting a soft glow across the room. Jason was still asleep, on his side, facing me, one arm half draped over his pillow and his mouth slightly open in the most unbothered way. He looked peaceful, less guarded, like someone who didn't have to perform for a minute. I lay there for a while, just watching him breathe. Eventually, I slipped out of bed to make coffee, trying to process everything. The kiss. The conversation. Him choosing to stay in my bed. It wasn't nothing. That much I knew. But it also wasn't some fairy tale leap into coupledom. Jason had made it clear. He was still figuring things out. This was new, maybe scary. And maybe for both of us, it was safer in the quiet. In the moments between things. When he finally wandered into the kitchen, shirtless, of course, he gave me a sleepy grin and scratched the back of his neck. Hey, he said, thanks for yesterday. I handed him a mug of coffee. You're welcome. He leaned against the counter, sipping slowly. I don't want to make things weird. I still don't really know what this is. Neither do I said. We don't have to define it yet. He looked relieved. Cool. We left it there. The next few days were this delicate balance of pretending everything was normal while knowing, quietly, that nothing was. He still hogged the couch, still left empty bowls on the counter like a heathen, but sometimes he'd brush my arm as he passed. Sometimes he'd linger too long near me in the kitchen. Once, I caught him staring while I folded laundry, and instead of looking away, he just smiled. We didn't talk about that night again, but we didn't need to. It was Friday evening, almost a full week since the kiss, when things shifted again. I came home from work and found him sitting at the dining table, laptop open, glasses on. I had never seen him wear glasses before. Didn't know you wore those, I said, dropping my bag. I don't, usually, but I get headaches if I stare at screens too long. I paused. They look good on you. He looked up. You think? I nodded, suddenly aware of the warmth rising in my chest. That night, we ordered Thai food and watched something dumb on Netflix. We sat a little closer than usual. I caught myself watching the way he absent-mindedly licked his thumb after picking up a piece of spring roll. Stupid tiny things that somehow felt enormous. And then, later, when the plates were cleared and we were sitting in the calm after the show, Jason turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Do you think I'm just experimenting?" The question caught me off guard, not because it wasn't valid, but because it was laced with something I hadn't heard from him before: worry. "I don't know," I said carefully. "Are you?" He looked down at his hands. "I don't want to hurt you. I like being around you. I like this, but I'm scared I'm gonna screw it up. Or realize I'm not what you need." I stepped closer, sitting down across from him. "I'm not asking you to be anything you're not. I'm just asking you to be honest. With me, with yourself." He nodded slowly. "I am being honest. That's the thing. I've never felt this way before." "Then that's enough for now," I said. "We'll figure the rest out as we go." Jason reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. And for a moment, we just sat there, connected by a single point of touch. Then he stood up, walked around the table, and kissed me again, this time with no hesitation. That kiss was different, not because it was longer or deeper, though it was both, but because it didn't feel like a question anymore. It felt like a decision, like something Jason had finally stopped second-guessing. When he pulled away, he didn't look nervous. He looked steady, confident, like he'd crossed a line he didn't want to go back behind. "You good?" I asked softly, my hand still resting on his waist. He nodded. "Yeah. Better than good." That night, we didn't sleep in separate rooms. We didn't just talk. We didn't rush into anything either. We moved slowly, like we had all the time in the world. The lights stayed low. The air felt warm. Every touch felt intentional. Exploratory, sure, but not unsure. He asked if things were okay, often. I nodded every time. What we did that night wasn't about crossing a line. It was about stepping into something new, together. Something tender, something unknown, something real. The next morning, I expected some kind of fallout. The usual post-intimacy awkwardness, or that knee-jerk emotional retreat people have when things move fast. But Jason surprised me again. He was up before me, shirtless in the kitchen, flipping pancakes. "Seriously?" I asked, rubbing my eyes. He grinned. "Figured I'd make breakfast. Seems like a good post-hookup gesture, right?" I laughed. "Is that what last night was? A hookup?" He paused, flipping a pancake with far more skill than I expected. "No," he said quietly. "It wasn't. That's not how I meant it." I walked over and leaned against the counter beside him. "Good. Me neither." He glanced at me sideways, that same grin returning. "I like this. Us? Me too." We ate at the table, legs brushing underneath. We didn't talk about labels. We didn't have to. The next few days blurred into a kind of cozy rhythm, one where touches came easier, where kisses were no longer stolen or uncertain. He started holding my hand absent-mindedly while we watched TV. He'd kiss my shoulder in the kitchen, just because. I found myself waiting for those moments, craving them. But real life doesn't pause for new love. It was Thursday when Jason's dad, my boss, texted me. "Hey, can you stop by my office tomorrow? Just a quick catch-up." My stomach dropped. Jason hadn't told him he was staying with me, let alone anything else. "You okay?" Jason asked, noticing my face as I stared at the screen. "It's your dad," I said. "He wants to talk." Jason froze. "Did he say why?" "No." He ran a hand through his hair. "Shit. What do you want me to say?" "I don't know," he said, pacing a little. I didn't think this would happen so fast. I was gonna tell him. Eventually. "It's okay," I said quickly. "You don't owe him anything right now, but I just need to know what we are, so I know how to handle it if he asks." Jason stopped pacing, turned toward me. "What we are," he repeated. Then he walked over and took my hand. We're something I want to keep figuring out. I nodded. Then I'll tell him the truth. Just maybe not all of it. Jason smiled, relieved. Fair enough. We didn't know what would happen next. But for once, I didn't feel nervous about it. I felt ready. The next morning, I showed up at my boss's office right on time, a knot in my stomach tightening with every step. He waved me in like it was nothing, like we were just grabbing coffee. Hey, thanks for coming. Just wanted to check in. You've been killing it lately, by the way. Clients are happy, deadlines are smooth. I nodded, trying to act normal. Thanks. I've been keeping busy. He leaned back in his chair. So, how's the situation with Jason? There it was. I took a breath. It's good. He's been respectful. Helps out. Keeps to himself mostly. My boss studied me for a moment. Eyes narrowed just slightly. And you're cool with him still staying there? It's been, what, almost 3 weeks? Yeah. It's not a problem. He nodded slowly, like he was trying to read between the lines. He said he needed space. Time to figure things out. You're a good guy for giving him that. Happy to help, I said, managing a smile. He didn't press, just scribbled something on a sticky note and moved on to talking about an upcoming pitch meeting. That was it. No dramatic confrontation, no suspicion. But when I left the office, I couldn't shake the feeling that the clock had started ticking. At home, Jason was waiting for me. He was sitting on the couch, fidgeting with the strings of his hoodie like a kid about to get scolded. So? He asked. All good, I said. He just wanted to check in. Jason exhaled. God, I hate this. You hate what? Hiding, being this careful. I sat down beside him. Then don't. We don't have to. He looked at me for a long moment. You'd be okay with that? With people knowing? I nodded. I'm not going to shout it from the rooftop, but I'm not ashamed. Jason reached over, his hand finding mine. Neither am I. That night, he posted a photo on his Instagram story. Just a simple snapshot, our legs stretched out on the couch, our socked feet barely touching, a laptop open between us. No faces, no names, but enough. It was the first time he'd ever acknowledged me publicly like that. Later, lying in bed, he curled up behind me and whispered, "You're the first guy I've ever done this with." And I don't regret it. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't need to. I just reached back, laced our fingers together, and let the silence say everything. It wasn't perfect after that. There were awkward moments. A couple weird looks from people at work when Jason showed up to pick me up for lunch. One of our mutual friends DM'd me, asking if the Instagram post meant what she thought it did. Jason hesitated before replying to his dad's texts sometimes, as if just seeing the name triggered a little knot in his chest. But we found a rhythm. He didn't call it dating right away, and I didn't push for it. Instead, we just lived. Shared mornings, shared takeout, shared Spotify playlists that slowly started overlapping. We started grocery shopping together like we were married and had a favorite corner of the couch. He'd sit with his legs across my lap while scrolling Reddit, and I'd pretend I wasn't checking him out every 5 minutes. One Sunday morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Jason was already in the kitchen, shirtless, hair a mess, humming something vaguely off-key. He handed me a mug without saying a word. I took it, sipped, then smiled. "You're getting domestic," he smirked. "I like it. You. This." We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, legs tangled. I don't remember what we talked about that morning. Probably something dumb. Something like what we'd eat for lunch or whether pineapple belonged on pizza. But I remember how he looked at me. Like I was no longer a surprise in his life, like I was a decision. A choice he'd made, and one he was proud of. A few weeks later, we went out to a bar together. Not a date, officially, but close. It was one of those casual, dim places with too many TVs and not enough bartenders. We sat at the corner of the bar. sipping beers, sharing fries. I leaned in to say something, and Jason just kissed me. Quick, easy, confident, like he didn't care who saw. He pulled back and said, "Sorry." "Don't be," I said. He smiled. "I'm not." The bartender gave us a little look. A woman at the end of the bar raised her eyebrows. Jason noticed, but didn't flinch. Later that night, as we walked home, he slipped his hand into mine without a word. I looked over at him. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," I said, squeezing his fingers. "Just didn't think you'd do that. Not here." "I didn't either," he said, then shrugged. "But you make it easy." That was it. The moment I knew I was in this. All the way. And maybe he didn't say it out loud yet, but I could feel it in the way he touched me, the way he stayed, the way he kept showing up. Whatever we were, whatever label we landed on someday, it was real, and it had only just begun.